Right, hi there. So we're back in the studio, and I'm just doing this video just on the phone because I want to prove I'm not using a computer for this bit. Right, so I was thinking the other day, love all my hardware. Sometimes I don't like to use a computer with it, as I've mentioned before. Now, I find some of the hardware very, very restrictive. Particularly such as the Volcas. You've only got, I think, 8 memory slots, and you've got like 1 bar each. Same thing on the TR8. You've only got you've got 32 patterns, but again, it's a bit restrictive. The TB-03 does have a vast amount of patterns you can use, and the TB-03 as well has got quite a few, but I like to kind of have my songs evolve a little bit more, and I want a bit more flexibility than that. So I was trying to think of a way around doing this, and I was sort of looking at the BeatStep Pro, and then I suddenly thought, hang on, you idiot, we've got an Electribe there, surely that can do the job. And yes, it can, because the Electribe's got loads of memory in it. You can now, in the update that came out earlier in this year, you can string patterns together. So whereas each pattern is only 4 bars, you can string them together in groups of 4 bars and have like 8 bar evolving drum grooves or whatever. So what I thought was, right, is this all going to work via MIDI, so I can sequence stuff either directly on the hardware, or I can sequence on the Electribe. And yes, it works, and it's dead easy. So let me just explain what I'm doing and the connections. So with the Electribe, basically there's 16 pads, and each pad generates a MIDI signal on each. So start again. Right, 16 pads, and each one is a MIDI channel. Right, so pad 1 will send out messages on MIDI channel 1, MIDI channel 2, MIDI channel 3, and so on. So I just need to get my notebook out so I can remember how I set all this up. There we go. So I'm just doing this all basically with standard MIDI cables, and I've got a couple of MIDI splitter cables. So I've got no special MIDI interface or MIDI clock device or whatever. It just works via standard MIDI. The great thing is, with the Roland gear, my stand's gone very wonky there. Come back straight. There we go. OCD again. So yeah, the System 1, the Aira, all the Aira gear basically, and the TB-03 has MIDI through, which allows me to do all this without a separate MIDI interface. So I'm sort of using the MX1 as a as kind of like the central hub, as the mixer, which is what it is. Just get the horrible flashing lights off. So in terms of sort of audio connections, this is basically as I've done before if you've seen my other videos. So the TR8, the TB-03, the System 1 and the VT3 are all going into the USB connections here. So they're getting all their audio over USB. Everything else is just going into these remaining channels just on standard audio cables. Okay, so nothing special going off there. I've basically got everything set in terms of MIDI. God, I was talking about Diddy on the last one I did on these. Now it's VIDI cables. Right, MIDI cables. No, not MIDI cables. MIDI settings. Right, all my MIDI settings on everything in terms of kind of synchronization is set to auto. Okay, so I'm not doing it internal or external. I'm just setting it to auto, and it seems to work. And I've got the settings on the Aira gear to allow MIDI to pass through. And I think on the TB-03 it just kind of does it automatically, so that's fine. The way I've got it set up, I've got the same thing on the MX1. I don't know if you can see up there, I've got the sync setting on auto. Right, so I'm not sure why it's doing it this way, but it works this way. The TR8 seems to be the master controller. Whether that's because it's going into USB socket 1 on the MX1, I don't know. But when I press play on the hold on, let me just get that onto something that's not got on. So when I press play on the TR8, okay, it's going to start everything else playing, and it's all synchronized up in time. So that gives me an option to either sequence stuff directly on here or sequence it on the Electribe, because the Electribe will start playing as well. If I press play on the TR8, you can see it starts playing. Okay, right, so that's all those settings. So then in terms of connections, what I'm doing is I've got my little chart here of out and in and what he's doing, which bit. So let's start with the MX1. So I've got MIDI out, just a standard MIDI out cable, again 5-pin MIDI cable going out of the MX1 to the in of the Electribe. I'm then taking the MIDI out of the Electribe to the MIDI in of the TR8. I'm taking the MIDI out of the TR8 to the MIDI in of the TB3. Now what I've got is, the problem with the Volcas is they've only got MIDI in, they've not got any MIDI out. So that's kind of like the end of that chain of MIDI I can do. So what I've done on the TB3 is, sorry, start again. No, I've got MIDI out from the TR8 going to the TB-03. Then the MIDI out, let me just move this out of the way, I've got a MIDI splitter cable. Okay, so you can see that's one MIDI out and it has two sockets coming in, and that's going to split the MIDI coming out of that. So one of those is going to the TB3, so it's sending an out from there to the TB3 on there into a MIDI splitter cable. Cable was about £4 off eBay. Okay, it's dead cheap. So that's what I'm calling kind of MIDI A out of there, and MIDI B out of there is going to the Volca bass. So kind of MIDI B, that's the end of the line for MIDI B, because that's not got a MIDI out. But MIDI A from the TB3 going into here now allows me to pass the MIDI through the TB3. Okay, so I'm then taking MIDI out of the TB3 to MIDI in on the System 1. And then I've put another splitter cable, which I don't need to show you, but it's behind there. Okay, another MIDI splitter cable. So kind of, let's call MIDI A is going out to the MIDI in of the Minilogue, and MIDI B from there is going to MIDI in of the Volca doodah. What's this called? Volca keys. Right, so everything is connected via MIDI. That's kind of the limit. That's the extent that I can go with it at the moment, because if we kind of chain everything round when we get to the System 1, there's no MIDI out on the Volca bass. No, that's the Volca keys. There's no MIDI out in there, so that's kind of like the end of the road on that one. And then even though the Minilogue has got MIDI out, it doesn't, as far as I know, have MIDI through. So again, I can't just pass MIDI through that, right? So that's the great thing with the Aira gear. So well done, Roland. Thumbs up for having MIDI through on all your gear, because it makes life dead easy. Right. So I've kind of got my MIDI settings on fairly random settings, MIDI channels. So the Volca bass is on. Well, let's go through them. Right. So I've got nothing on channel 1. So let me just get the. Now I'll get it on the keyboard. Okay, on here. So the great thing then with this is, I can sequence, I can use the built-in sequencer on the Electribe, okay, to sequence any of the hardware. And I can also use the sounds from the Electribe as well. Because what I find with the Electribe is, I wasn't that keen when I bought it, and I know a lot of people have kind of moaned about it, but it's one of those bits of gear that every time you use it, you kind of find something new on it, and then after a while you think, yes, it is great. I nearly sold this a while back, and I'm glad I didn't, because I can now use it for this. So, so in terms of my MIDI channels, I've got nothing on MIDI channel 1. Okay, so I would use that for, let's just turn this up a little bit. I've got this sound on here. Okay, so that's a built-in sound from the Electribe. So I'm just doing the parts across here. So part 2 is MIDI channel 2. Okay, so as I play on that, okay, that is now playing the TB3. If I show you from back here. Okay, so I can sequence the TB3 from here, or I can have a sequence playing on the TB3 as well. MIDI channel 3, I've got nothing on it, so that's the inbuilt sound of the Electribe. MIDI channel 4 is my Volca bass. And actually, I mean, the great thing if you want to do it is, so that's, if I just change the cutoff, okay, and I'm playing it over on here. Okay, so that's playing the Volca bass. That gives me massive, much more sequencing capabilities with the Volca bass as well, which is great. And as well, obviously, I can have an oscillator playing on here as well, and kind of layer sounds as well, which is even cooler. So if I want like a, you know, I don't know, just get, let's put some weird sounds in. So geez, yeah. So I can layer those sounds up with the Volca bass as well. Great, happy days. Everyone's a winner. Right, MIDI channel 5 is the Minilogue. So if I'm playing on here, if you look there, you can see that's playing the Minilogue. So I can sequence the Minilogue from here. Whip through these. MIDI channel 6 is the TB-03. Okay, so I can sequence that from here, although I do prefer sequencing from here with a lot of stuff because you can get better slides and accents with that. I'll just demonstrate a bit of a track in a second. I've got nothing on 7 and 8 or 9. On 10, I've got, well, the TR8 is on 10. So if I want to sequence the TR8 from here, although I think I've got a hand clap on there, right? Let's just turn that down. You've got to get it on the right octave. Which one is it? Don't know. But anyway, okay, so that'll do the same thing for the TR8 on channel 10. I've got nothing on 11, 12, or 13, or 14. So again, they're free for the internal sounds from the Electribe. On 15, that's the Volca keys. So you can see we've got the same sound on there, look. It's going to sequence it off there. And channel 16 is set to my System 1. So if I just put that, okay, that sound on there, that will also play on the Electribe as well. So the Electribe has kind of become my central sequencer, and it's got like so many patterns I can use in this. I mean, it's got like 244, 46, 47, 250, is it? Yeah, 250 patterns, okay, of 4 bars, which is more than enough. I had done I'd used to use the Trigger Finger Pro in the past, which was great, but that only had 16 patterns of 4 bars. So you can see the amount that we can do with this. So I could quite easily do, you know, all my tracks like this now without having to touch the computer, which is what I'm aiming to do. So for my next few tracks, I'm going to write it purely with the hardware. Sorry, Ableton Push, you're going to have a break for a bit. But what I'll do is I'll try and video some of these. I'll go through the process of kind of writing and arranging the track, but then show you how I would then record it. Obviously, I would then need the computer to record it into Ableton Live and mix it and master it and so on. But in terms of the actual writing and the arrangement, I'm going to do it without a computer, which feels quite strange. Not necessarily the writing process, but the arrangement process, because I've always arranged songs looking on a screen. And all of a sudden you've not got that, and you've got to remember it. So I'm going to have to use my trusty notebook to work out some of the arrangement. And I'll try and video as much of that as I can and show you the recording process and so on. So the track I'm working on at the moment, which is going to be the first one, sounds like this. Let's just get rid of... I'll build a few bits up. So let's okay, so I'm just going to mute, and what I can do obviously, I can mute the parts from the Electribe, the bits that I don't want playing. Okay, so, and the Electribe's great for little, if you can hear, we've got like a little reverse cymbal coming up into sec there, and this, that little boom sound is all coming from the internal sounds on here. The bass line part is coming, I'm sequencing from here, okay, so I can then, I've got some drums sequenced on the TR8, got some ride in there. Okay, and then over on here we've got a few more, got like a little shuffly kind of sound. We've got like a pad, which will kind of, hold on, let me get the right one. Then I can use the filter and so on here to, So that's kind of how the tracks sound at the moment. I may put some live drums in as well. So I hope that makes sense. If you've got any questions, then of course put them in the comments below. But great, I love my Electribe even more now. I'm actually finding a great use for it. And you've got to love all the hardware with the flashing lights. So thanks for watching this one. Like I say, if you've got any questions or comments, stick them in the usual place. Please like the video, subscribe, share it around as much as you can, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.